Good morning, third graders, or good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're joining with me. Today we're going to be starting a new unit. This is week 4, day 1, and we are talking about summarizing. Okay, so this is SOL 3.6F, and it's about summarizing nonfiction. Okay, so we're going to work together today to figure out how to summarize nonfiction. And first, we're going to start out with a basic question. What is a summary? How do I summarize? So we are going to work through it together, and it's going to be great. So first, just a little bit about what I want you to be able to do today, your objective. So your objective today is to be able to explain and identify the parts of a summary and how they are used. So we're going to work together today to explain what is a summary and then also figure out what are the parts of a summary. What do we put in there? And then also, how are we going to use summaries in our real life and at school? Okay? So I am excited to get started. So what we're going to do is you're going to be with me on this journey called Let's Sum It Up. Okay? So let me get that started for you. Let's sum it up, and this is summarizing nonfiction. So we want to ask ourselves a couple important questions. First, what is a summary? What makes a good summary? Because not all summaries are good summaries. How can I write a summary of nonfiction? Okay? So today we're really just going to focus on the first two. What is a summary and what makes a good summary? Okay, we'll get to this third one tomorrow. Okay, today we're just going to focus on what makes a really good summary. So I'm going to let you decide. Here's a multiple choice question. What do you think a summary is? Do you think a summary is all of the ideas from the text written in your own words? Do you think it's your opinions about what you just read? Do you think it's a summary? Do you think a summary is a shortened form of the text with the most important ideas, or a review of the text with main ideas and your opinions? So I'll give you a second to think, and then we will decide what the answer is. All right, so the correct answer is C. A summary is a shortened form of a text with all the most important ideas. So if you chose C, you got it right. If not, that's okay, because we're learning together. And we're going to figure out why this is the answer, okay? So why do we write summaries? Do we just do it because it's fun? Well, sometimes it is, but there's good reasons why we write summaries. A reader can write a summary of a text to let someone know the main idea or the most important parts. Okay, so that's key number one. It's the most important parts, not everything that happened in the story, just the most important things. You also might want to summarize something when you're retelling. So when you read something and someone says, "Oh, was that a good book? Did you like that? What was it about?" Are you going to read it to them word for word? Or are you going to tell them every single thing that happened in the whole story? Or are you just going to give them a quick little snippet, a little idea of what you read about? So this helps others understand the text without having to read it. Okay, and same thing here. It helps you understand it. As you figure out the most important ideas, your brain is really thinking about that text. It's really thinking about who was in the text, what were they doing, why were they doing that, and why is it important? So your brain is really having to think about what you just read. Okay, and so sometimes, like today, you might write a summary or work with summaries as part of a test or part of a school assignment, but there are times when we summarize information in our real life. So I'm going to give you some examples. When a new movie comes out, they've got that fancy preview that comes out and you're so excited to see the movie. That preview is a little bit like a summary, okay? Because it's telling you the most important things. It's getting you excited about what that movie is about, Okay, so that is an example of a summary. Another good example is when your mom or dad or aunt, uncle, grandma, when you come home from school and they say, "What'd you learn today?" or "How was your day?" Do you tell them every single thing that happened? Well, first I went to the bathroom and then I sharpened my pencil and then I sat in my seat and then I ate my breakfast. You don't tell them every single thing that happened. You don't tell them every detail. You just give them a good summary. You might say, "Well, during math, we talked about fractions. And in reading, we read this really great story." And you might tell them a little bit about the story. And then you might say, "And in science, we did this awesome science experiment. And I just loved it. And it was my favorite thing that we did today. And then we went to recess and it was kind of cold because it was windy. But overall, it was a good day." So you gave your parents a little snapshot, a little idea of what your day was like. Okay, so that's a great idea. A great example of a summary. Another example is, I know since we've been at home, I've been on Netflix. I'm sure some of you have too. Okay, and when you're deciding to watch something on Netflix, when you click on a show, there's this little box of writing and it tells you what the show is about. So if you've never seen it, then you have an idea of what that show is going to be about and what each episode is about. So those small little text boxes, those are summaries. Okay, so we use summaries all the time without even knowing it. So here's a great question. How long should a summary be? I want you to think about that. How long do you think a summary should be? Do you think one word is enough for a summary? What about one sentence? Well, actually, it depends on how long the original text is. So a summary of a one-page poem is going to be very short. It might just be one sentence or two sentences. But if you were going to take Toothpaste Millionaire, which is the book that we were reading before we left school, that's a novel, that's a chapter book. If you're going to be reading that and then I ask you to write a summary, you're going to need to write more than one sentence, right? You might need to write a whole page or more. So it just depends on how long your original text is. That's going to determine how long your summary is. But what's always important is that the summary should be shorter than the original text. Okay? So if I give you a one-page story, your summary shouldn't also be a page long. That means that you told me everything that happened in the story, and that's not a summary. Okay, so a good summary is a shortened version and only focuses on what's most important. Okay, so let's talk about what makes a good summary. And we've already identified some of these things, so we're well on our way. And we're going to go over each one individually, but we're really gonna get into that tomorrow. But I'm going to introduce you to these ideas today. Here are the 4 basic rules for writing a summary of nonfiction. Hold on. We forgot an important part. We're writing summaries of nonfiction. What is nonfiction? Well, nonfiction means that it's true. So if you said it's something that's true, you were right. So things like newspapers and magazine articles and stories about real people, biographies, those are nonfiction. So we have to kind of approach our summary a little different when it's nonfiction than when it's a story that is fiction. So we really want to focus on these 4 main things for summarizing nonfiction. The first thing is to include the important ideas from the text. And I think we've said that a lot. So I think you guys probably have that one. You're only including important information. That means who are the main people that they're talking about? What are those people doing? And why is it important? Okay, those are the kind of big questions you guys are going to have to ask yourself. Okay, the next thing, number 2, that makes a good summary of nonfiction is to put it into your own words. You don't want to copy and paste. You don't want to just write word for word what the other person has already written in the story. You want to take it, think about it, and then put it in your own words. That makes a good summary. The number 3 is to leave out little details and repeated information. So if there's a small little detail about the main character having a blue shirt, well, that might not be the most important thing in the story. So you probably don't need to include it in your summary. Now, if the blue shirt was important to the story, then it might need to be included. But if they just told you, oh, he's wearing a blue shirt and some jeans and sneakers as he gets ready to go to school, you might not need to include that into your summary. Okay, and then the last thing, which we're going to talk about a lot tomorrow, is using the text structure of the text. And what they mean by that is if your story is comparing and contrasting, meaning it's finding the similarities and the differences between two things or more than two things, then you want to make sure that your summary also compares and contrasts those things. If what you're reading is a cause and effect, meaning it's telling you this happened because of this other thing that happened, it gives you a cause and an effect, you need to make sure that when you're writing your summary, you also include the cause and the effect. So it's just important that you identify what the text structure is. And we're going to practice with that some tomorrow and the next day, because that's the trickiest one. But that's okay, because we're doing it together and it's going to be great. Okay, so we will really, really dive deep into these 4 things tomorrow. And I will give you a short little passage about a butterfly. And we'll talk about all of these 4 things and how we can write a summary. And then tomorrow, at the end of our session, you're going to write a summary yourself. Okay, so I think we got a good introduction into what a summary is. So now we're going to practice. Okay, so first I'm going to share with you something called a graphic organizer. And I know you guys have probably heard that word before when you were with your teacher. And your graphic organizer looks like this. Okay, so this says Newtown Summary. So here it says selection title. I'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see it. Okay, and this is where you would, right here is where you would put the name of the thing that you were reading, the book or the article, whatever text you were reading. And then underneath it says question, who, what, where, when, why, and how. So these are the important questions that you're going to ask yourself about what you just read. And then you're going to put the answers to those questions right here under facts from the selection. Once you have all of this filled out, then you can come right under here and write your nice paragraph or your few sentences about what you read, which will become your summary. Okay, so we're going to use this a lot when we're together this next couple of days, and you're going to see this a couple times. So don't worry, we're going to practice using it, and right now we're going to practice using it with a passage that I really, really enjoy. So we are going to read it together and then just answer the who, what, where, when, why, and how questions on our graphic organizer. And then tomorrow, we will work on actually writing a summary. Okay? Okay, so this passage that we're going to read about is about jellyfish. All right, so you should see my passage right here. It's called Jellyfish. So I'm going to read it to you, and then we're going to talk about filling in our graphic organizer using this passage. Jellyfish are sea creatures that can be found in all oceans. They are made up of a jelly-like substance. Many people are surprised that jellyfish are not actually fish. They are animals that have long tentacles, but not having a brain. But I think this is supposed to say, but they do not have a brain. There are many different kinds of jellyfish. There are both stinging and non-stinging jellyfish. Some jellyfish are larger than humans. Others are as small as a pinhead. Many jellyfish are transparent. We're going to talk about what that word means in a minute. They can be very hard to see. However, there are others that are brightly colored. Jellyfish are plankton because they drift in the water. They are not good swimmers. Sometimes large groups of jellyfish can be found. Scientists call this a bloom. Some blooms can be made up of millions of jellyfish. Okay, so this is a very short one-page passage, and it gives a lot of good information. It also has great pictures so you can see what jellyfish look like. So this is nonfiction because it's true. It's factual information about jellyfish. So let's go back to our graphic organizer, and we're going to talk about who, what, where, when, why, and how. So I'm actually going to pull up a document that we can work on together. Okay, so right here it says who, what, where, when, why, and how. So we are going to, oh, if I can get this working, we are going to answer those questions right here together. So for who sounds like a person, but who is this talking about? Well, this is talking about jellyfish. So that is our who. Next, it asks what. Well, what are they telling you about jellyfish? What are they telling you? So let's go back to the passage and think about it for a second. It says jellyfish are sea creatures that can be found in all oceans. I think that's a good example. So let's go back. Jellyfish are sea creatures that live in all oceans. Where? Well, we just said they live in the ocean. There's not really a great when, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes they don't tell you when, sometimes they just tell you where. So sometimes we're going to have to leave some of our pieces of our graphic organizer blank, and that's okay. Okay, so they wanted to tell you more about jellyfish. So in this why and this how section, that's where you're really going to start adding some important details about what jellyfish are and why the author is writing about them. Okay, so why is he telling you about them? So let's go back to our passage, and it says there are many different types or kinds of jellyfish. They're both stinging and non-stinging. Okay, and they tell you about their size and also about how they look. So something that's important that they want to tell you about is how they look. It also wants to tell you about how they survive in the water. It talks about how they're not good swimmers and how they travel, and they are a lot of times in big groups, and there can be up to 1,000,000 jellyfish. So what we're going to do is on that part that says why, we're going to say jellyfish are, actually jellyfish come in different sizes and colors. Some are transparent. So let's talk about that word, transparent. What does that word mean? Does anyone know? So transparent means almost like see-through, like you can almost see through it. It's very light. It's kind of like a window, okay? We can see right through it. And a lot of jellyfish are see-through. You can see right through them to the other side, okay? And then also we want to talk about in the why and the how. jellyfish live in groups called blooms. Remember they talked about that? Blooms can have up to 1 million jellyfish. That was an important fact. Okay, so now we know that we're talking about jellyfish. Jellyfish are sea creatures that live in all oceans. We already know the where is that they're living in the ocean. And then we didn't have a when, and that's okay. So don't be upset if you miss one of these. And then the why and the how is that jellyfish come in different sizes and colors. Some are transparent, which remember, transparent means that it's see-through. And jellyfish live in groups called blooms, and that blooms can have up to 1 million jellyfish in them, which is really, really cool. So you can use this to fill in your graphic organizer. So if you have your graphic organizer, if you can get your graphic organizer printed, then you could write this in your graphic organizer, which would be great. Okay, so that's it. That's all we have to do. We've answered the most important questions. We've pulled out the most important information, and now we're ready to write a nice paragraph, 4 to 5 sentences about what we read. Okay, but we're going to do that tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to come back together. We're going to read what we wrote about jellyfish again, and then we're going to write a really great summary. It has been lovely to see you, and I'm excited for what we're going to work on this week with summarizing, and I hope you'll come back tomorrow and work with us on writing a great summary. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.